when you quit your job, your best case scenario is where you're at right now, what you're doing. How would you describe that? And did you really anticipate that would have been your best case scenario?
Yes and no. Ultra success, yes. Path, no. I felt very confident that I would either get what I wanted or die. I genuinely. So I knew that I was just going to continue because I was just in a tremendous amount of pain and the need of validation from exterior. That pain was motivation enough for me to just continue to drive no matter what happened until I got where I wanted to be. Now, obviously, I have new goals now, but and they're motivated a little bit differently. But by and large, yes, I did think that I was going to be successful. Did I think it was going to be necessarily through gyms and then a gym turnaround business? And then no, I didn't think that was. And I think that's the push and pull of being opportunistic when things open up, but also being dedicated to the long term path.
Do you still feel like you need the validation?
Probably to a degree. Yeah. I think a lot of it even just comes from internal validation. Like I want to prove it to me. Like I want to prove it to me. And so I think that's where a lot of it comes from now. I'm sure there is some external stuff because humans are social creatures. And if everyone hated me tomorrow, I'm sure I'd have a bad day. But I think I would just say it's shifted in percentage. I would say when I was 19, it was 99.999 everybody else and 0.001% me. And maybe now I'm 60/40, maybe 70/30 if I'm lucky, I'm having a good day. My goal is just to just increase that percentage over time and maybe die close to 90-ish.
So after you quit, what was the first taste of success you had that gave you validation that maybe that was the right decision to quit and leave my job?
I actually saw pretty rapid success with the gym. So I was fortunate in that way. I made profit every month. The first month I broke even. The second month I made $5,000, which was what I was making at the consulting job more or less. The next month I made 10,000. Next month I made 15, 20, and then it kind of went from there. And so I had immediate validation. I would say I didn't feel secure. I felt like it was going to be over tomorrow, always. I would say that feeling has taken a long time to get rid of. And I would say that truthfully, right now, I don't have that feeling, but I have certainly had that at times with Gym Launch in the earlier days, Prestige Labs in the earlier days, the gyms. Absolutely. When I was running those, I was like, tomorrow, everything could go away. So I think that that has diminished, but yeah, from the get go. And that's probably not the standard entrepreneur story. People hear the sleeping in the gym part and they're like, oh, like he went through the grind, and I did. But I was also like stacking every single dollar that came in and just plowing it in my bank account because I had no employees. And the only thing I paid for every month was the rent for the facility. And I did everything to run an entire gym. Like imagine a gym you walk into and there's no employees. There's one guy. And I did that for 6 months.
What is now to you? Is now what you're doing hard or are you in an easy phase?
Hard changes. Like the way the heart feels is different. So like when I was starting out, the hard was just sheer exhaustion and fatigue of just like my first session would start at 4:30. My last sales consult ended at 10 o'clock at night. And then I would do all the billing and process all the contracts and whatnot, which ended at 11:30. And then I would sleep right there on the floor. And then I did that because I didn't have to save the commute time. And then I would just wake up in a cold terror of stress. And I would be up and my shirt would be clinging to me because it's soaked in stress sweat. So that's what it felt like then. When we started doing Gym Launch, the stress was more around like money. It was cash flow issues of, okay, we're launching 8 gyms next month. I've got to front hotels, airfare, rental car, per diems, ad spend, get all those campaigns up and running. And I had to front all that cash off of last month's sale. So it was more like a managing the cash that was coming into the business thing, which was super stressful, but that was a different kind of stress. Gym Launches hard was one, it was realizing that there was an opportunity in licensing and just called digital products or B2B services that weren't like in person. That was the big unlock when we went from a few $100,000 a month. I think we were like 300 or 400 when we were doing like turnarounds in person. Now 2 or 3, and at 4.5 million a month, just riding that. But there, the issues were me. And so it was my character traits that were the deficiency at that point. So I feel like I had to change. Now I'm sure I had to grow at all these stages, but like my ability to handle stress in general, my focus had to increase because when you're a small business owner, you can shift the ship really quickly, you can turn, you can pivot and all that kind of stuff. But when you have hundreds of families that are, if just on the employee side, but thousands if you include the customer base that are relying on you, it's like you can't make these snap decisions anymore. And so it's like I had to calm down and become less erratic. And that's where the stress and emotional tolerance fed into, okay, we have a bad day. It doesn't mean we need to change the strategy. It just means you had a bad day. And then what do you do? Nothing. That's all it is. So one of the things that's been a huge epiphany for me as we've gone through this journey is that, because I talk about character traits a lot, because when we look at portfolio companies, for the most time, we're betting on the jockey. We understand the fundamentals of the business and we're betting on this market, et cetera. But like the number one thing, 80% of our scorecard is based on the entrepreneur. And so when we're looking at that, a lot of people, at least myself included, when I was coming up, I thought I'm impatient. I would speak that over myself, like I'm an impatient person. And I wanted to be more patient. So the difference between somebody who's loyal to their wife and somebody who is not the fact that they might have their eye get caught, because that happens, they're human. You're going to have emotions, right? But the difference between somebody who's loyal or not is whether they cheat, right? And so I think that it's the same thing with patience. It's the same thing with honesty. It's not, do you want to lie? It's, do you choose not to despite wanting to lie? And it's just like courage, which is the famous one with, it's not the absence of fear, but taking action despite it. And so I think a lot of those character traits, a lot of people, it feels like these amorphous things that we want to have and take off the shelf and put inside of ourselves. And so we think that we need to feel a certain way in order to be a patient person or be a kind person or whatever, when, at least in my experience, it's been, you don't feel that way. And you take the action that a patient or kind or courageous or loyal or honest person would take despite the feeling. And that was it. That was a huge unlock for me in terms of understanding my stress levels, in terms of decision making within the company. If I want to be a long-term thinker, then I have to, despite not wanting to, act in the interest of the long term. And I think when I started doing that, the compounding of the businesses in general started to really unlock.
I think it comes down to discipline, probably.
Yeah. Short term. Yeah. Being able to be uncomfortable in the short term for whatever you want in the long term. Absolutely. But yeah, in the final chapter, which you consider with acquisition.com, to close the loop on that, the hard now is just, I would say it's those character traits that I just went over, but just more. It's just the standard of patience is higher. The standard of discipline is higher. The standard of focus is higher. And so it's not, and even to further this point, character traits are not binary, right? They're not, you are patient, you are not patient. It's how patient are you? It's not you're dishonest or honest, it's how honest are you? And so I think that maybe what was able to get me through Jim Launch Prestige Labs and Alan was maybe like a 7 out of 10. And like to get to $1 billion plus, which is what we're on the path to do now, I got to be a 9. You know what I mean? And maybe to get to 10 billion, I got to be a 9.5. And so at least I would say that's what hard feels like, is choosing the actions that I know is aligned with the person that I need to be in order to do the thing I want to do, despite not feeling like it.